Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're going to Sanhedrin daf Chav Ches. We are going to begin in the middle of Chav Zayin Beis by the new Mishnah. Let's see the Masnis. The Elu Hein Hakroivim. So we mentioned that there are certain people that are apostle, either because they're as witnesses or maybe judges, possibly because they're gazlonim or they do things which are like stealing. A karoiv also is possible. So who are considered to be relatives? So acha, your brother, v'achi aviv, your father's brother, v'achi imo, your mother's brother, which means even if it's your half brother, so you can't testify on his behalf because you're still considered relatives through being a half brother. Ubal chayso, and your sister's husband, ubal achas aviv, and your father's sister's husband. Ubal achais imo, and your mother's sister's husband. Ubal imo, and your mother's husband, which doesn't mean your father, but it means from a second marriage, like your stepfather. V'chamav, which is father-in-law. V'gisoi, and your brother-in-law. Hein uvenehen v'chasnehen. Not only they, but also their children and their in-laws. So all of these are linked together as kroivim, and therefore they're all considered to be pasul edus. And then it says v'chor goy levadoi. Levadoi, says Rashi, v'lo b'noi. When it comes to your stepson, so let's say a person gets remarried and his wife has a child from a previous marriage, who's a boy, that's your stepson. So in that situation, because of my link to my new wife, I am also a karev to her son, but not to his children. Rabbi Yosef, Zu Mishnah Rabbi Kiva. That's according to Shittas Rabbi Kiva. Of a Mishnah Rishayna, originally, Daido, one's uncle, Ven Daidai, your uncle's son, which could be a cousin, V'chol haroyel yarsho, anyone who's fit to inherit. V'chol karav lo ba'oisasho, and anyone who's related to at that time. Says Rashi, someone who's fit for Yerusha, dahainu karoivya av, davka related on the father's side. However, karoivya aim, however, on the mother's side could go in achi imo, for example, your mother's brother, right? So kashuloi shahar enu royal yarsho. So even though it's your uncle, but it's from your mother's brother. So your mother's brother is not shaykh to Yerusha. So it's interesting, there's a link, according to the Shita, of whether your Negei B'Eidos is connected to Yerusha. And also, it's only your Kar B'Oisa Shah at the time of the Eidos. Says Rashi, Shubo Lahayed O Shirah Eidos. At the time either you testified or you saw the witness the testimony. However, back in the Mishnah, that's the whole Hayakarov. Let's say you were related, V'nisrachik, and then let's say Shemes Ishtar says your wife died, Kaidim Shra Edazu, before you saw the testimony. So even though you had a relationship, let's say with your wife's father, but at the time that the testimony took place, the wife had already died, so you're not really related to her father. Even if a person's daughter died, that's also considered to be a karoiv, because to those children. In other words, the fact that she died, maybe you don't have a relationship with the father-in-law anymore. But if you still have children, that already has a link. So therefore you still have a relationship with the father-in-law through his grandchildren or through your children. So let's say when it comes to someone who you care about someone, you hate someone, Oyev zeh sheshashminu That's someone who is invited to his wedding. And therefore, if you're invited to his wedding, so probably you're going to be Nogea Be'edus. You're going to want to find favoritism toward your friend. Someone doesn't, you don't speak to someone for 3 days because you're so upset. And Rahmanas, there are people who don't speak for years. No, we're not nechshad. We're not going to be nechshad on this. Says Rashi, sheker mishum eva v'ava. We're not going to allow our emotions to fog the truth and not say the truth and lie. But dafka, however, Rashi says it's only be'edus pligi. However, when it comes to being a judge, you can't be a judge if you hate or love that person in front of you. Basically, you shouldn't really have much of a relationship. Because to be a judge, you need to be able to see things in a clear way. An aid is just you give testimony. So you're going to give testimony, you're not going to lie. But again, it's a machlokus when it comes to edus by an oiv and a signing. Okay, let's see the Gemara. So mina hanimili. How do we know that these are all kroivim? And therefore, because they're kroivim, they're also, the pasuk will show that your testimony won't do anything. The Tanur Rabbanim. Uyimsu avois al banim. That avois, your father won't die through the children. So matamna im lo mishul yimsu avois ba'avin banim ubanim ba'avin avois harikfar nemar ish bechetu yimsu. A person will be punished based on their own sins. So the pasuk seems to not really be teaching anything extra. Elo yimsu avos al banim be'edus banim ubanim yimsu al avois be'edus avois. That a person cannot be punished based on the testimony of the son to the father to the son. Which, again, you could understand there is this very intimate, close relationship. So as a kadoiv, they're not able to punish. So it's very funny, often you hear kids will say things about, oh, my dad does this, my mom does this, and you can't necessarily accept what they say. Of course, we're talking about children, this is obviously talking about adults. But the point is that someone who's living intimately in someone else's home and sees certain things, so their testimony may be skewed. Uban, but Posh's Xersakasa. Ubanim ba'avois lo. Is it true that a person won't get punished for the sins of your fathers? Itaka says that you are punished. You're punished. It says in the Seres Dibros, Shleishim Rebbeim, up to 4 generations. It's totally if you continue to act in their ways, then not only are you responsible for your actions, but theirs as well, because you've linked your sins, your actions to them. But if you disconnect, then of course you're not responsible. And also the avonos of your fathers, you were wiped away with them. It's referring to when you originally were sinning because of them, and then you disconnected. So when it says that a person is going to, or I should say on the side, so to stick, you need the gears on the side. So if you don't do anything wrong, then you're not going to be held accountable for your parents. However, if you do, then you are. Okay. So that's why it says ish b'chatu yumsu is kisheinu oichsen nemar. Ma'amakaim abba vanis avoisim atem yimoku. That's kish oichsen masi avoisen b'yadeyan. Okay, you need that gears on the side. V'loi v'ksiv v'koshlu ish b'achiv. That a person will stumble with his brother ish b'avin achav. Umashikun reim zebezeh. Kol Yisrael reim zebezeh. So I'm responsible for someone else. So if they sin, I should also be held accountable. Now, Hasim That's specifically in the case where we had the opportunity to encourage them not to sin, to stop them. You had the ability to speak up and you said nothing, so then you're also held accountable. As we continue, okay, fine. We know a father can't testify for the son. The son can't testify for the father. The kol shekin avos lahadadi, and all certainly fathers which are equal, banim u'banim anolan. So in other words, when avos and avos, it means that they're linked to one another, like brothers. They're on the same level, right? Reuven to Shimon. So certainly Reuven's kids can't testify against Reuven. Shimon's kids can't testify Reuven. Reuven's kids can't testify against Reuven. Reuven can't testify against his own kids. And then also avos to avos, fathers to fathers. Reuven to Shimon also. So banim u'banim anolan. How do we know Reuven's sons and Shimon's sons can't testify against each other, which means cousins? How are cousins also? My banim defil banim lahadadi. If that says banim, in other words, they're banim, they're linked lahadadi. In other words, through their fathers. That I have my father and your father are brothers, so we can't testify against each other. Ashkam banim lahadadi. I can understand that cousins can't testify against each other. Banim almanon. How do we know both cousins together can't testify at someone else, right? I can understand they can't testify against each other, but maybe the two of them could team up as witnesses. So, when it comes to becoming Eid Zaymim, you need to be mazam both of these. If you want to tell me that both cousins can come together and testify, then nimsa Eid Zaymim neherag be'edas achav. Then you're going to find that an Eid Zaymim can be killed by the edus of his brothers. So, since you need two Eidim to get killed, so the other cousin's edus will end up getting the other person killed. Basically, that's what ends up happening. Says Rashi, De'ilav de'asid, if his other cousin didn't testify with him, Hai kroiva b'hadei, lo yahavi mikdal, he wouldn't have been killed. Nimsa banim mesim zeh al zeh. So it turns out that they are going to end up punishing each other, because in order to become an Eid Zaymim and to be punished, both of them have to testify. Which means if only one of them testified, and even if I'm an Eid Zaymim, it doesn't do anything. You can't punish me. You need two witnesses that are Eidim Zaymim. Those two witnesses are cousins, which means that indirectly they're causing each one harm if they turn out to be Eidim Zaymim. So therefore, it must be they can't testify against others as well. So according to that svara, Haditnan, we learned Shloish Achen, there's three brothers, Echem Estarfi Mahen, and we said that one of them could combine. It says Rashi, Echad min ashuk, someone from the marketplace, Im kol echad echad, with each one of them. Each one could link up with another guy. Me'idin al chilas shnei chazaka, shel karka, shel adam min ashuk. Umeid echad min achin, v'abo min ashuk al shan rishayna, ve'echad min achin, v'abo min ashuk al shan shniya, v'shlish al shlishis. Ve'elu shlosh edius v'chazaka kayamas. V'loim rinan edus achasi. We don't say it's one edus. V'hara edim kroivim el gimel edius dinhu. Okay, we said that it's three separate testimonies. So what happens? So one brother knew that this guy was there for 1 year, year number one. Another guy, another brother, another relative, year number two. Third brother knew year number three, and they can all team up. They're giving separate edus that this person was in this person's field for year one, year two, year three, and they could all combine. Now they combine, and the din is that they are considered to be, it's a chazaka, because he was there for 3 years. So that's edus. So the question is, How does that work? Back in the Gemara. Shloish achim v'echem stark mehen hari el gimel edis. Dehin edis achas lahazama nimsa ed zaymim mishalom mamun beedis achiv. So the truth is, what happens if they become edim zaymin? Right, because right now they're trying to take away someone's field. Says Rashi, di'ad demitzami kuhu, until you're mazam all of them, says Rashi, mishalmi mamoina, they shouldn't have to pay. You need all of them linked together, because in order for this person to be able to take the field away from the original owner, you have to establish that there was 3 years of chazaka, which means you would have to be mazam all of them. El hazamam al makasi. We don't say it that way. We just say the hazama just comes, says Rashi, alidei hamazimin oisai. When the second kat of Edus is mazim, hein mishalmin v'lozel zeh al yad zeh hachinami hazama me'al makasi. So why can't they testify? Why should we look at hazama as the reason why two cousins can't come and testify against someone else? El imkin lichtav kra uven al avos inami heim al avos mayu banim afil banim alma. So we're going to say one out from the Xeris Akasav. The Ashkan Kroivi Av. I can understand the Kroivi Av because it's, as we saw in the Mishnah, in the Rashi, it's linked to Yerusha. So Kroivi Emanol. And how do we know even relatives linked to the mother also can't testify? Avois Trezimni. It says it twice. So since we don't need to say the word Av twice, so it's an Enu Inyan to link it to relatives of the mother. Ashkan L'chayva Zochas Manolin. Okay, I understand you can't, because it says Lo Yumsu, you can't punish them or have them killed, so maybe you could testify in a positive way. The fact that it says it twice, it's another enu inyan. Ashkan b'dinin nefashis, because the pasuk's talking about killing, which is din nefashis. Din menos menolin. So mishbanachin yolachem mishbat hishvelachem. We say this far many times. It's interesting when we apply it, when we don't apply it. But because we sometimes don't connect dini mamas to dini nefashis, but apparently here we do. Which means a kadoiv cannot testify even when it comes to dini mamas. Amar Abachi, Abba lo yedli. So he said, my father cannot testify for me. Who? Uvenoi v'chasnoi. Amar Rav. This is what Rav says. Achi Abba, which is my father's brother, which is also known as my uncle, okay? So Rav is saying, I cannot testify for my father's brother, or my father's brother, my uncle can't testify against me because I'm his nephew. Okay, that's Achi Abba Lo Yedli, who not only not my uncle, also Uvnoi, also his son, which ends up being like my cousin, the Chasnai, and my cousin's in-law. Af ani lo yed loy ani uvni v'chasni. I also can't do the same thing. It goes back and forth. V'mai, why not? Havile shlishi borishin. Now, Rav holds that you cannot testify for his uncle or for his cousins. He also holds a case of shlishi borishin is possible. Now, a third generation to a first generation. So apparently he holds that a third generation to a first generation cannot testify. Vanan sheni misheni tanan. Our Mishnah is talking about a sheni to a sheni, like a cousin. Sheni barishan tanan, or like to an uncle or to a nephew. Shlish barishan lo tanan. So my chasnu nekatani b'masnisan chasam b'noi. It's talking about my son's son-in-law. So in fact, he does hold that the Mishnah holds that shlish barishan is aser. The lisni ben b'noi. So Milsa Agavorchi Kamashwan is coming to teach the Baal Ki'ishtoi that a husband has the same status as the wife. So therefore, these relatives are all linked together. Because again, he could have just said that I can't testify. Who can't testify? My son, my cousin can't testify against me, or my first cousin once removed can't testify. That would also be a case of Rishon L'Shlishi. That would also be a case of Shlishi B'Sheni or Shlishi B'Rishon. But again, he wanted to mention his son-in-law. So obviously, also would be the next son, but it's even Bal K'ishtay. V'Elhada Tani Rav Chia Shmoina Avos Shehen Eser and Barba. There's 8 avos, which are actually 24, which includes the son and son-in-law, but it should be the grandsons through the 3rd generation. So Hani Tlasin V'Tartan Havi. Again, it should be 32 if we want to include the grandsons through the 3rd generation. El Olam Chasnu Mamish. V'mai Karli Chasmanoi. So why does he say Chasmanoi? Kivan Dama Alma Ka'osi Kidor Acher Dami. Since they're only related through marriage, it's like a 3rd generation. So Yehachi Havile Shlish B'Sheni. Rav Asher Shlish B'Sheni. We know that Rav does Machshir Shlish B'Sheni. Ella Rav Diermer Kreb Elazar. The Sanhedrin Belazar Omer Kashem She'achi Abelo Yedli Hu V'Noi V'Chasnu Kach Ben Achi Abelo Yedli Hu V'Noi V'Chasnoi. So he holds that even the first cousin once removed, which is Shlishi L'Sheni. So certainly, so again, according to Rav, he says Shlishi B'Rishon, not, right? So if, let's say, it's his brother's son's son, so it's like your great nephew can't testify against you. That's a Shlishi B'Rishon. But when it comes to your first cousin once removed, which is Shlishi B'Sheni, so it's actually a machlokas. V'yakati havili Shlishi B'Sheni v'Rav Aksha Shlishi B'Sheni. Rav Savrle Kavasa B'Chada Pagla B'Chada. That's a machlokas. My time with Rav Diyamer Kral Yum So Abasal Banim U Banim. So why does it add the vav? Rav was Dor Acher comes to include another generation. Rabbi Lezer Al Banim Omer Rachmana Psuli the Avos Shani Abanim. So the Psuli Avos, we put them on the children. Rav Nachman, Achi Chamoisi, my mother-in-law's brother, Lo Yoidli, should not testify for me. Ben Achi Chamoisi Lo Yoidli, my mother-in-law's brother's son shouldn't testify for me. Ben Achos Chamoisi Lo Yoidli, and my mother-in-law's sister's son shouldn't testify for me. But Tanatuna, Baal Chaisai, when it comes to your sister's husband, Ubal Achaisav, and your father's sister's husband, Ubal Achais Imoi, and your mother's sister's husband, Hain, not only them, but V'nehen, their children, V'chasnehen, and their son-in-laws, they're all not allowed to testify for you. Amar Avashi, Ki Havinim Be'ula, Iboil, and they ask the question, Achi Chamav Mahu, when it comes to your father-in-law's brother, what's the din? Ben Achi Chamav Mahu. When it comes to your father-in-law's brother's son, what's the din? Ben Achos Chamav Mahu. Your father-in-law's sister's son, what's the din? So Amalan, Tenisua. Achiv, your brother, Ba'achi Aviv, and your father's brother, which is your uncle, B'achi Imo, and your mother's brother, even though it's from your mother's side. Heinu V'nehen, not only they are apostle, they and their children, V'chasnein, even their sons-in-law. So therefore we see that they're all apostle. Therefore it's actually a raya, they're all apostle. Rabbi Lamizmin, as we continue to Chav Chesam and Beis, Gavili, so he went to sell these garments. So Rashi says, Kalafim. Bomine asked the question, Mahu Shir Adam Be'eshus Chorgo. What is the din She'id Adam Be'eshus Chorgo? Can you testify against your stepson, which is from your wife's side? It says Rashi, Al Nixi Malug Shala, regarding her possessions. The Nixi Malug are the possessions that she brings into the marriage, in which the husband is able to eat paydas, but she keeps the karka. Basur Amri Baal Ki Ishto. Your wife is like your husband, therefore no. But Pandisa Amri Isha Kabbalah, that the wife is like the husband. How do we know that in fact a woman is like her husband? That ervas achi avicha segala. This Gemara is a little bit old. That the erva of your father's brother you should not reveal. El ishtoi lo sikrav. His wife, you should not come close. Doidaschahi, she is like your aunt. I v'halo eshes doidahi, it's your uncle's wife. What do you mean? It's not your aunt, it's your uncle's wife. Mechlal the isha kabayla, because it's the same thing. She's still your aunt. Either she's your aunt because she is your she's your father's brother's wife, or it could be your father's sister. Doesn't make any difference. It's still your aunt. Ubal imahu uvnoi v'chasnoi. So Mishnah said that the your mother's husband, your second marriage, him as well as his kids, and also your stepfather's son is also possible. So benoi hainu achiv, it's the same thing. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, el achia ach. We're talking about a case of achia ach. What is the case of achia ach? So Yaakov and Leah get married, a second marriage. Leah had in her first marriage Shimon from some other guy. Yaakov was his first marriage had Reuven. So Reuven and Shimon are not married, but then Yaakov and Leah in their second marriage have a child together, Levi. So Reuven and Shimon are not related. They're only connected through Levi as their half brother because they're related either through the mother's side or the father's side. So that's what's called achia ach. They share either the same mother, the same father, right? So they're half brothers. So fine. So Rav Chisda Akshir Achia Ach Armulei Lo Shmila Chad Rav Yirmiyah Armulei Lo Shmili Koloimar Lo Svirli. I actually don't hold like that because I hold taka you could be made. Ihachi Hainu Achiv Tana Achiv Mina Av Katani Achiv Mina Aim. So the point is that if it's a maternal brother or a paternal brother, half maternal brother, half paternal brother, that's why it mentions both. Okay. Rav Chisda. Avi Chosin. Let's see a couple questions. Question 1. Erevas achi avicha lo segala. El eishes lo sikrav doidascha. Ma nilman mepasik zeh le'inyan psuli edus. So minikari lo eishes doidai, since your uncle's wife is called your aunt, shmami the isha kabayla. We see that a woman has the same status as her husband. Lafikach ein meid le'eshes chorgo kamo de pasel chorgoi. So again, we see from here that there is a prohibition. Doesn't matter if it's your aunt because it's your father's sister, or it's your aunt because it's your father's brother's wife. Either way, her children are still considered to be your kroivim. Therefore, that's what it means. Question 2. My isruach lamisni psul edus debal imo deudin livnoi v'chasnoi v'hari benoi hainu achiv. So one answer that we said is on nisrachel achia ach the hainu ben sheish bal imo miisha cheres. So you're talking about a son who has his mother's husband is from another relationship, as we already established. Okay, that's one answer. Or tana achim min av and tani achim min aim. Okay, let's keep going. Rav Chisda avi chasen v'avi kala. So the father of the chasen, the father of the kala, me'idin zelzeh. They can testify to one another. V'loy damul hadadi. They're not like related or connected. El ki achla ladana. It's kind of like a barrel, like a lid or a stopper on a barrel, and therefore they're allowed to testify. Omer Rabba b'Barchana made adam ishtai arusa. You can testify on your wife who is all you had erison. So Omer Ravina lo amran el lafukimina avululi lo mehimin. That's only for her to lose. But to win the case, then you're not believed. Because obviously you want her to win because you're getting married to her. Of course you're not believed because you're related. So my daitoch, what was your halamina that you would think that you're not related? Because as a kohen, and she dies, you're not an oinen, you cannot become tummy for her, as an arusa. V'chein hilo and neneso matamaloi mason, she dies, and a yarsh, you don't inherit her. Mesu goivik subasa. So hasam b'sheratol rachmana, because the pasuk says it's only a kohen can only become tummy to sherai, to his actual wife. The pasuk says that akati lav sheri, she's not your full wife yet. Certainly you're very close to her emotionally because you got engaged to her. So he said, when it comes to your stepson, it's only him, but not his children. It stops there because you're only married, you're only related to him through marriage because it's your wife's son. So your stepson is karoi, but not his kids. Tanuban. Chargo avado Rabbi Yosef Aimer Gisoi, your brother-in-law. So my let's say my sister's husband, right? So my sister's husband is my brother-in-law, so he's also apostle. Vatani idach gisel avadoi. It means only my brother-in-law, but not his kids. Rabbi Huda Aimer Chargo, my stepson. So my kaimer, what is being said here? That it's only your stepson, and also only your brother-in-law. So right, it's not only your stepson but also your brother-in-law. So not only your brother-in-law but also your stepson. So masdisin gatani giso hu v'noi v'chasnoi mani. Who's that like? Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yosef. This is what they were saying. Chargoi, your stepson is levado. You have a giso hu v'noi v'chasnoi. When it comes to your brother-in-law, it's not just him, but it's also his kids and his son-in-law. The Aser Rabbi Yosef Lamemer giso levadoi. No, it's Gisai, the brother-in-law is by itself. Avachargo, Huvanova Chasnai. So that they argue about both things. They both people. Is it Dafka the son and stepson, but no one else? But the brother-in-law is even extended, or vice versa. 8, which is 24. Come on, look, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. As we said, that includes the son and in the son-in-law, right? So he said 8, which includes the son, which is another 8, plus the son-in-law, which is another 8, which equals 24. Because it can't be like either of them, because these two cases which are mentioned, they both hold that one of them is being excluded. So it's not going to get to 24. El Hakikamer. Chargo Lavadoi of a Giso Huvan of a Chasnoi. Also, Rabbi Yisrael Memer Giso Lavadoi, the Kol Shekain Chargoi. And he's certainly the stepson only. Masnis Rabbi Huda Brisa Rabbi Yosi. Or Rabbi Huda Amar Shmuel Halacha Rabbi Yosi. The halacha taka is like the shita of Rabbi Yosi that includes the brother-in-law. As we're saying, Rabbi Yosi is saying that the giso is only the brother-in-law, and certainly only the stepson. Okay, and that's what it means. The halacha is like Rabbi Yosi. He matnasa tahavi chasimi Allah tregisi. So there was this matana that there was a signature of 2 brothers-in-law. So Rabbi Yosi lachshura. They thought maybe this should be acceptable. Yom Rabbi Huda Shmuel halach Rabbi Yosi. Right. So what's the problem? So Amalei Abai Mamai Rabbi Yosi the Masnisin the Machshir Begisai. Who says that it's referring to our case that Machshir is the son-in-law, the brother-in-law, Dilma Rabbi Yosef the Bryce the Apostle Begisai, right? So we see actually in our Bryce that it does possible. Lo Sagadaitach. The Amr Shmuel could go in Ana Upinachas Davin Achav Begisai, that me and my brother-in-law of a Gisi the Alma Shaper Dami, we maybe can't testify against each other, but for us to testify on something else is okay. So therefore, maybe they could testify together regarding this matana. The Dilma could go in Noah Pinchas Mishum the Gisa Kaimer. Emily Zil Kani be Edi Masira. Kribbelazim. Yamar Abba Maida Rebelazim and Mazoi Mataicha Shu Apostle. So you can't even tell me, oh well, why is it kosher? Because we don't really need signatures. Because according to Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't hold a chasima card. He holds any mesira, and therefore you don't need the signatures. But it's not true. Even though you don't need signatures, but if there are signatures, they cannot be improper signatures. Improper signatures will destroy the star. It's true. Rabbi Eliezer holds you don't need signatures, but once they're there, it's got to be done properly. So Amalei Zil go. Lo shavkele de oisvina loch. Lo shavkele, do not leave me de oisvina loch. Okay, what is that? What is that coming to tell us? Let's look at Rashi. Zil kind of made a masira. Let's say you have other witnesses that saw that was given over the idu vatahi shulcha the savik Rabbi Eliezer diyamer masaktas gittin and feel lo chasnabo edim even there's no signatures el shenasam b'fnei edim kosher, but as long as it was given over in front of edim, it's good. The go to chasm shubadim shein edim chaysam all again el mimnei tikkun olam. Yeah, but it's a mezuzah v'saycha. Says Rashi. If there are edim sulim on this document, shu apostle, it's not considered to be a good star. So on this he said, Zil it hasn't been by me anyone who asks on this. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yehuda, the halacha taka is like the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda again said in our Mishnah that when it comes to a person, it says Rabbi Yehuda oimer fil mesa bitoi deyeshul banim min harizeh kadoiv. So even though maybe your wife's father shouldn't be related to once your wife dies, but if there's children, then they are all linked to one another. So halachas like him v'chein omer Rabbi Baruchana Rabbi Yochanan ein halach Rabbi Yehuda. Digid amatzi lo laha the Rabbi Baruchana aha as zu darish Rabbi Yosei Guli. The pasuk says also al kohanim v'lo shav and asher hayeh b'mahem. You should go to the judges in that day. V'chi sal daitach shadam ha'ayich etzel shevet shlo hayeh b'yamav. How can you go to a judge who's not alive? El zeh shahayeh karov. It's referring to someone who was related to you, but is rachik, and then he became not related to you anymore, and that's also okay. Amar Rabbi Baruchana Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yosei Guli with halachas like him. Bnei Chamua de Mar Ukva, the brother-in-law of Mar Ukva, as we continue to Chav Tesam and Aleph, they were close together, and then all of a sudden they became separated. It says Rashi Shemesa Chaysam, because his sister died, Eishes Mar Ukva, which is the wife of Mar Ukva. So Mar Ukva, his wife died, and therefore he was really no longer connected to his brother-in-law, because he was a karoiv, his brother-in-law, then his rachik, because he wasn't married to her anymore. Havi also kamed ladina amalhu pasil ladina. Now you're puzzled to do din with the brother-in-law, even though you're not married to her anymore because she died. I brought a letter from the western Eretz Israel. What? Is it a measure of wax it's attached to? It's that you will not listen to me. Let's look at Rashi. Bekav shel shava bit me a claimer eini dovuk b'chem klal. Now I'm not attached to them at all. El atoin, but you will say asinun dina. You're not going to listen to the din. Okay, let's see a couple more questions possibly. So we saw questions 1 and 2, and that is it for that. Let's see question TA. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to just put this here. TA 7. What is the din by your Eishes Chargoi? I'm doing the stopping by Eishes Chargoi to pay Menashe Shar Kravim. So, not an easy question. Only Rashi. So shark roivim shu posel v'nehen im king gamu noshim posel. Lafi shabanim roy liyarish as imon mashin chargo de benoi kosher. Okay. Okay. Out of all that daf, that's the only question they could ask. Okay. Question TB8. Ubal imahu uvenoi v'chasnu. Madua tana hachav psuloi shel ben bal ima v'aru achiv the tana bereisha. So that's the same questions we saw before. So either Rabbi says achya ach, or chad mishel oven v'chad mishel imoi. Ad kan.